Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. Now, there are a lot of people in Norway right now with more than one job. So John, can you go into this recent story?
Yeah, well, there was an article in E24, which is one of the left-leaning, I would say, business news papers in Norway. And it said more people are getting a second job. And what they're saying is that they're very afraid of, and they're meeting currently the Scandinavian leaders of the workers' parties, the Social Democrats, I think is the proper name for it. And they're meeting and talking about how they're very worried about, that the working class is, becoming an underclass, basically, because what is happening is, even with there could be massive unions in Norway. I remember, when I worked in Norway, this is a little bit different than other places, is that in Norway, what happens is you have a union and non-unionized people working in one company. So I'd never been a part of a union, but I was a non-unionized person. And I always went in and asked for a raise or did this or that. Sometimes, of course, they just raise it by whatever they promised the union.
Sure.
And then the unions call people leeches, for for getting the same raise as the other people. But what's more interesting is there's more and more Norwegian people that are starting to look for second jobs, and this is a phenomenon that's all over the world. We saw, let me tell a quick story. From the 60s, 70s, a lot of people that I talked to that lived back then, they said, well, it was just the man usually that had the one job. And then, of course, what was interesting at the time when they started to introduce the women into the workforce was also when they started moving away, I believe, from the fiat currency, into a full fiat currency system, because you got so much more inflation. So now that one salary is not enough by far, so you have to have a second person. And this is what's happening now with jobs. So you have a whole bunch of people, and most of these people that have the second jobs are low-paying jobs, right? So they have not enough at that one job, so they have to have a second job in order to, keep their head afloat above the water.
Yeah, and before you continue, John, something I wanted to add to that. Well, there's nothing wrong with women working. Everyone should do whatever they want to do. At the same time, there was a push by the establishment many years ago, at least in the United States, in order to get women working, in order for them to be able to take more income tax from families. That's another big part of it. Yeah, so there's always an ulterior motive to all these things.
Of course it is, yeah. And nothing wrong against women. I love my wife. She's fantastic. She is she's executive director. Yeah. She is a leader in the community. And there's fantastic women. I have a lot of great women friends out there that are doing great things. But what we need to talk about is this move where you have to have more and more jobs. But what is the underlying factor here is the monetary system. It's the inflation in Norway and in Scandinavia currently. There's a lot of the countries have higher inflation because now a lot of people, what they also have done, because they have high taxes, is they also have to get into a lot of debt because they want to go on vacation as everybody else. So they actually use a lot of just regular debt, not even credit card debt, but other debt that they take out to just use on things, not anything useful. I call productive and unproductive debt. That Norwegians are taking out unproductive debt on a massive scale. And this is also all, I looked at the numbers for all of the Scandinavian countries, and it's a massive number. We could, at another time, maybe more time, we'll show you the whole list over the countries. But top 10 countries, Canada is there, of course, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, all the big socialist countries in Scandinavia, and Canada, of course, is also there. The problem here is that we're seeing a higher inflation, more and more people are getting into debt. The governments are starting to get into debt. Not so much Norway yet because we got the oil, but a lot of the other Scandinavian countries are getting into a lot of debt because their governments are so overbloated. We're looking at Finland now is putting out minimum income when they have no business of doing that, because the problem is that Finland is the country currently with the biggest government in the world, other than, of course, the totalitarian states like China,
like the Stalinist North Korea and stuff like that.
Yeah. But there you see, like, there's a massive problem, and they're very, very worried, the Scandinavian leaders, especially the left side, that we're going to end up like Greece, Italy, Spain, and so on. Well, that's where you're going to end up, because you have the exact same policies as they did. And you're going to end up there. There's no way out of it when you run a socialist country and this massive government spending. You're going to squeeze people with taxation, and then you're going to end up having them go into massive amounts of debt, and suddenly you're going to have a collapse because they can't pay their debts and so on. And of course, the businesses that a lot of times here are getting squeezed because you got these big businesses getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they can't compete the small businesses. So now we have a full-fledged collapse of the free, any type of little smidge of free market that would be.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how these big businesses are getting bigger and bigger while the small businesses are pushed out of the market, and that's largely due to like the government manipulation that you were talking about before, because a lot of these big corporations are monopolized and
and they got the tax laws written
through government favor and subsidization. And you mentioned like the minimum income, and of course that what that does is, it's interesting how so many people on the left talk about how horrible fascism is, which it is, but then they don't seem to realize that this manipulation of business, these regulations put forward over businesses and this minimum income is technically a form of fascism, because it's government telling corporations what they can do, and that actually pushes more employment out of the market, and then pushes small businesses out of the market because they can't afford to pay. And then if they have like the carbon tax and stuff like that, even worse.
Oh yeah.
And
Norway's had that for forever. 1991 when we invented carbon tax.
And the hypocrisy is absolutely absurd. So I think people on the left have to join us and start realizing that classical liberalism or libertarianism is the way to go, because this form of manipulation on the marketplace is causing a lot of damage. And it's all part of this like elaborate globalist agenda too, because like I was mentioning before, women were pushed to work in order so they could take more income tax from them, and at the same time it would cut down on homeschooling, which pushes children into public schools, which causes them to be indoctrinated by the government. Once again, women can do whatever they want, men can do whatever they want. I'm a voluntarist. I believe in freedom for every individual, but it's important to talk about the ulterior motives involved in all. There's
a big agenda behind all this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's important that we talk about, and of course, as you mentioned, Holly Swanson did a great piece.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Before, and I think that this is just another example of out of control government. What do you think?
Well, it's exactly what it is. It's and again, I think it was Vladimir Lenin said that socialism is just another step towards communism.
It always ends up like that, eh? And it's hard to escape when you see all these people just going, well, socialism is fair and it's against greed and it's free and everything. Meanwhile, there's absolutely no true freedom involved in socialism. Meanwhile, the greed, you'd think it's not greedy for the state to steal everyone's money and build himself palaces while you drink out of a gutter. And it's not fair because you're forcing people at gunpoint to do things. I mean, it's all mixed up. The dialogue, it's all mixed up, and people have to understand reality instead of following these talking points because they sound good and they feel good without any research to just say something and pretend to be smart. So moving from there, we will get back at you with a lot more on this subject. There's a lot to break down on this, and of course we do talk about Norway a lot because John comes from Norway, so he has a lot of insight into what things are like over there, just like we do a lot on Canada because we're in Canada, and we of course try to tackle every country we can in the world with every issue from all angles. So thanks for watching, everyone. We will be back at you with much more. Check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated. And of course, check out our link in the description and the comments for ANARCHAPULCO, where you can save 10% on your ticket to ANARCHAPULCO by typing in promo code WAM. That's WAM. So stay tuned for much more. This is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth,
be the change.